What's up, everybody, and welcome to the SLP Wealth Financially Free Era podcast. Today, David and I are going to be chatting about some correlations in personal finance and some personal finance topics as it relates to the secret lives of Mormon wives. Believe it or not, there are some financial topics that could be super applicable to our everyday folks that we chat with on this podcast, as outlandish as that might seem. So let's jump into it. Today, we are having a little fun combining two of my favorite topics, pop culture and personal finance. We're going to dive into the financial side of reality TV, specifically what kind of advice I'd give to the cast of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Think of this as a guide not just for them, but for anyone with 1099 contractor income or a career with inconsistent paychecks. That's a big theme in, I think, what we're going to be talking about today. If you're new around here, I'm Megan McGuire, a certified financial planner professional, and I've got David with me today, here from California, and we are going to be sipping our beverages, our sparkling waters and sparkling, what is this? I think I put a poppy in here, but I got swig. I'm in Georgia. I had somebody mail me a swig cup from out on the West Coast. So we could really bring this to full life. But thanks, David, for joining me.
Thanks for having me. And I am a financial planner who is going to try to not get fired today by saying things that are too inappropriate. So you've all been warned. I got here my sparkling ice. It's my I don't know, I don't drink a lot of soda, but I think we're trying to do the dirty soda stuff that they do on the show. So
Hmm.
I just ran to the grocery store and got this. Fun fact, this used to be in college. I used to love mixing this with vodka. And I was really tempted to do that today for this show, for this topic. But, I'll be respectful of, the rules on their show, and I will not do that. So I'm ready to go.
Well, hey, and in the Mormon, the whole show, you're not able to drink alcohol and not supposed to drink caffeine. So no coffee, no tea. I don't know how Coke gets away with it, but here we are. So
I
we'll
think
jump in.
I think they brought that up too, and they're like, anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's nerd out about money and this show. I'm excited. I have
Yes.
no idea what to expect.
Me either. So buckle up. And this is all in good fun. So don't take anything we say here too seriously. But let's get started and let's talk about the background. So Mom Talk was a group of Mormon influencers on TikTok. Initially, they gained popularity by sharing relatable content about motherhood, marriage, family life, often challenging the traditional Mormon gender roles. And the group was spearheaded by, well, is maybe still today, debatable. We'll see in the next season. But
We can
Taylor
debate
Frankie
on that.
Paul, yeah. And they gained traction with dance videos, lifestyle content, humor, but later became known for a soft swinging scandal that involved some of its members. And doing a little, like, I wanted somebody else to kind of summarize what this whole show is about in case anyone was new to it or just like a good way to kick it off. But I went to the good old Reddit channels, and found an anonymous Redditor that said, my understanding was that Mom Talk inception was modern Mormonism, where women had a place in the world, they could work, could be more than just a wife. This went against the Mormon grain to begin with, and then even more because they interpreted the scripture way more loosely than most, which is why they were about to justify drinking and normally outlawed stuff. So that's kind of what we were talking about with the caffeine here. It was girls' content created for other girls to push more of this modern narrative. And they had a mini following, and then they got blasted to fame when Taylor, the lead of this group, exposed the swinging scandal. And everyone was like, oh my God, have you seen these Mormon swingers? It was contradictory, and it was a way that really skyrocketed their audience. We'll actually talk a little bit about how no bad press, what is it? What is that saying? Bad, there's no such thing as bad press, basically.
Hmm.
We'll come back to that a little later, but this landed them basically the show that we're talking about today. How are we going to talk about money here, though? I think let's first talk about where their money is coming from. So, where do they get paid? How do they get paid? Through social media. I think that's sometimes still like a mystery. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I mean, it was a mystery for me for a long time when influencers came on the scene, however many years ago. I was
Yeah.
like, how do you guys get paid? Um, as far as this show goes, I could take a guess that the main ways that they get paid, number one, is each episode they probably get paid from the network to do the episode. So that's pretty self-explanatory.
Hmm.
The next way is, and it might even be the bigger way. I don't know. Brand deals are super huge. So each of these girls have their own following on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, whatever. And brands reach out to them to advertise on their channels or to have either them advertise, like do a segment for a brand or ad space or whatever. So that's another big way that these types of people get paid. And then there's also like book signings, book deals, press tours, meet and greets, all these I'm sure they have some merch that they sell. So
Hmm.
individually, they can go do things and use their brand to go sell stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's I think the main ways they get paid. And then they do crazy stuff on the show, like eating coffee up your butt. And I don't so like when you can do that on national television, you can monetize anything, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Yeah, there's lots of opportunities and it comes from a lot of different sources. And what does that mean? Well, a lot of it, if not most of it, is going to be 1099 income. And so that means no taxes are withheld up front, right? So like not like a W-2 wage earner where you get a regular paycheck, you have your employer set aside taxes and estimate and pay them for you. None of that. It's going to be here's a check for what you just did, this brand deal, this commercial, this episode. See you next time. Or maybe not, because they may not be hired again to do the next thing. It's very variable income, and it can fluctuate month to month. And this is very different than folks that have an expected salary each month. So I know you have a lot of clients that deal with 1099 income. What are some of the things that just like jump off the page where you're like, yep, this is definitely something that should be considered?
Yeah, I primarily work a lot with veterinarians. My wife's a vet. And so exactly the same as the people on the show, right? To the T.
Exactly.
Exactly. They do exactly the same thing. Um, and yeah, with so variable income is a thing that we got to plan for a lot. Because if I take it to veterinarians, we if you're an associate, yes, you probably get some sort of base, but it's usually base plus production, and the production's variable, and that's still W-2 income. But what if you're 100% relief vet, right? Oh, most of those are 1099 primarily, and then hey, what if you're a practice owner, right? So a lot of vet men and a lot of the types of people we work with do have uh, variable income, and there's a lot of cool planning opportunities that come with that. Um,
Hmm.
and I was just thinking about how crazy it is that I get to, for a job, talk about this today on a podcast. What was the actual question about variable income?
Just, some things that happen when it comes to variable income. And actually, we'll talk a little bit more about some of this to come, how to manage like your variable income, your 1099 income. But
Yeah. First thing that comes to mind is emergency reserves, actually. And we
mhm.
could talk taxes after that. I'm curious for your planning clients, if someone's 100% commission or 100%, I guess. Well, let's go back to what these girls do, which is like
Mhm.
I would call the most variable of variable income that you could possibly find. How much do you think they should have in emergency reserves? What do you
Yeah.
think? I'll give you my answer.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. And I think like financial planning definition would say 3 to 6 months is the like rough range. But if somebody has variable inconsistent income, we're leaning more towards that 6 month range. And you could be even more conservative if you have no idea where like the next paycheck's going to be coming from. Building that up to like a 12-month reserve could be smart too. But what's your thoughts?
My thoughts is the type of industry you're in getting variable income matters a lot.
Hmm.
For example, if you're a vet who's 100% 1099 because you're 100% relief vet, I don't think you need more than 6 months reserves. I would
Yeah.
still say maybe you want to, and depending on if you have a family or not, like maybe you do want to inch more towards the 6 month, but anything more than that, unless you need the cash to go buy something else like a house, just a pure emergency fund, you could get away with 6 months and potentially even less depending on your risk tolerance. These girls, I would say a year. I'd be
Right.
like, year, done. And it's to each their own, right? But this type of income could go away tomorrow. They
Hmm.
could get kicked off the show. They could be super famous, and then a year from now, no one cares, right? It's just the name of the game when it comes to reality TV and stardom. Um, Heck, when I was a mortgage broker, I felt, I was 100% commission. I felt that I needed 9 months reserves at least.
Hmm.
So it's, but if you're a vet or any type of medical professional, like realistically, and I'll just talk to the vets, like you could go pick up a relief shift next week if you started at zero. Like you
Hmm.
could find it. It's a very different, even though it's variable, it's a very different type of risk
Yeah.
compared to what these girls do.
Same
Um,
with like physicians or dentists that are doing like locums, or doing like, you know, just contract work between different offices. And so it's very much, yeah, I agree with you. It's like 3 to 6 months could be totally appropriate for someone whose income, like their job is pretty much defined. Like you are a dentist, you are a veterinarian, you are XYZ. You can go place yourself into another contract position or another job relatively easily. It's a pretty in-demand field. But when you are a influencer, a socialite, you know, there's a little more, okay, but what do you do? What can you do for me if it's a brand deal or something like that? And if your reputation isn't awesome, you're probably not going to get as many brand deals because your reputation isn't very awesome and not a lot of people are following you anymore. So that emergency reserve is super important. I think the other thing when it comes to 1099 income is setting aside money for taxes. That's a big part of like not having your employer take, money and paying your taxes for you. It's up to you to save and prepare for your tax bill every year. And you're going to have business expenses, right, that you can write off. It might look very different than like a veterinarian or a dentist, like what their business expenses are compared to like one of these secret Mormon wives' business expenses are. Like they might be able to write off their hair extensions. I don't know. Talk to your
I bet.
CPA. But set aside 30 to 40% for taxes. I know that hurts. But at the end of the day, that is not all your money. You're earning income. You do have to set aside money for taxes. You do have to pay taxes. And yes, you could do some very smart tax planning to minimize how much you're ultimately going to have to pay. But you don't want a big surprise at the end of the year come tax season. That's not fun, right? So setting money aside for taxes is super important. Fun stuff, though, saving for retirement. I know you talk about this a lot with your vet clients, your 1099 folks, like how to save for retirement when you're not relying on an employer to give you those buckets, right?
Yep. There's a lot of really cool tools that you can use as a self-employed person for retirement planning. Sometimes even more so than if you're just 100% W-2. Um, So like the first thing that comes to mind is like a solo 401k, which unless any of these people have full-time employees or employees that work for more than 20 hours a week for them, which maybe some of them do, but I'd kind of be surprised at actually.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe
if
Jesse with
it's
her hair salon, but
yeah, well,
maybe,
actually, we could dive into
yeah.
Jesse's hair salon. And actually, on Jesse's hair salon, all the girls probably go to her for their hair, and then they can write off the hair as a expense because they need
Hmm.
to look the way they do for the show. And then Jesse gets that income, and then, well, I wonder who Jesse goes. If Jesse does her own hair, like one of her workers does her hair, can she write that off? I don't know.
Right. It's a
And
good
then I
question.
won't. And then I won't even touch the tea that was, what's her name? Demi, and how Demi like was like on Jesse's like hair salon, and maybe I'm getting off topic. Let's see the question. Saving for retirement, right? Yeah, a solo 401k for probably everybody who doesn't own like a business with employees on this show is a really good tool that they could do. You can contribute 23,500 at least in this tax year for 2025 on the employee side, and then you're technically the employer too, and so you can contribute, up to the total is for this year 70 grand. But that back end employer side has some limits depending on exactly how much net profit that they actually made for quote their own business. And it depends on if
Hmm.
they're an S corp or not, which, it's funny as a planner, I keep on thinking when I watch this show because that's what we do, right? Is we think about this kind of stuff when we watch a show like
Right.
this. I'm like, oh, if they made less than 100K, like here's kind of, probably I don't know if they'd be an S corp, and so maybe they'd have this much they could do to their solo
Hmm.
401K versus if they make 500,000 because I don't know, they got so many brand deals, they made a book, they did whatever. Well, then, ooh, there's some considerations there. So it can get kind of complicated, but bird's eye view, solo 401k is huge. Jesse probably could take a look at doing a 401k
401k
through
plan.
her
Yeah.
business.
Hmm.
And you can get into, a lot of cool stuff with that. Here's a trap that Jesse shouldn't do that I see a lot of vet practice owners do. A lot of practice owners that I work with, a lot of old school ones too, maybe I don't know, traditional or simple IRAs used to be kind of the thing for small businesses. I think they used to be cheaper. I don't know. They're still around. The max on that 16,500 that you as the employer and the employees can contribute. And it's okay. But I think if you're a practice owner, or hey, Jesse, if you had a simple IRA because it used to be cheaper, well, nowadays it's really not. You can find some
Hmm.
really inexpensive 401k plans for your business. They consult with your accountant, but there's a whole bunch of tax incentives now for opening a 401k if you don't already have one for your employees. And that usually offsets most, if not all, of the costs of opening one in the first place. And now you get the 23,500 limit. Heck, you can maybe even find a plan that offers like a mega backdoor Roth option. We can get into that if you want. I don't know, but it's just for Jesse, probably look at like a 401k for a business. And also, maybe if she keeps her salon business separate from all this stuff that she does with her show, then you get maybe she could do like a solo 401k for that and maybe a traditional 401k. And you see, there's a
Hmm.
lot of cool stuff that you can do. Um,
Yeah,
and
all tax deductible things too. So if we're looking to save some money on taxes, like these types of accounts could be helpful. And that kind of ties into the investment strategy overall, because that's what I think about a lot when I'm watching reality shows. And
yeah.
I know they're making like a decent amount of money, and I'm like, okay, they're spending a good amount of money too. Do they have an investment strategy? Are they setting some money aside, like for retirement, but also for like just in a brokerage account, like a non-retirement investment account? That's what I think about a lot because there's so
Yeah.
much opportunity. Like if you have so much money coming in, even if let's say this influencer lifestyle for them is temporary. If it's just
Mhm.
something that really blows their income out of the water now, what a great time to take some, throw into the market and let grow for you over time because you have time on your side and be disciplined to set some of that money aside and let it grow for you. So I wonder about that too. So investment strategy, like, do they think about their long-term goals? I know it's probably hard to think when they're in such a like now kind of environment, but building an investment strategy for the long term or for the midterm, that could be super productive for folks that are in this type of situation. And that's what I would be asking each one of these girls, like, what's your investment situation look like? Where's your money at right now? Don't just tell
When
me it's in your house.
And when I'm watching these girls, I think, they're not, if they are if any of them happen to be super financially literate and into this kind of stuff, I don't know if they would show that on the show. So for all I
Yeah, because
know,
it's
they're
boring
all,
for like,
yeah, for all I know, they're all business moguls who are really savvy.
hmm
And whether they are or not, hey, if any of you guys are watching this, even though I primarily serve veterinarians, I would be honored to be any of your financial planners. So,
Right.
anyway, but yeah, there's so much planning opportunities with the fact that, this could be very short-lived. It could be a huge windfall. And so you want to get your
hmm
ducks in a row of like, how much should we put in what different types of retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, you name it, because you
hmm
could set yourself up for life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even just looking at it as like a kickstart to where like if you take things seriously now, then maybe money, income, business opportunities, like they continue to come, hopefully, right? And you don't have to work as hard later to support the lifestyle that you want because you've already got your investments growing for you. That's another way to look at it is like, take a little bit of sacrifice now to really kickstart your future so you don't have to always rely on having to go in and find the next brand deal or rely on pay rates. Um, we are going to talk about negotiating here in a second, but the last thing I wanted to
Mhm.
touch on when it comes to variable income, 1099 income, is literally just the fluctuating income. And how can you budget off of that? How can you plan off of it when your income isn't consistent? And that's really hard. That's what a lot of freelancers, part-time business owners, practice owners they have to deal with, right? Because it's not a consistent revenue stream. There might be some good averages to go off of, but what I used to like to tell clients who had variable income was let's set a monthly baseline budget. So let's get an idea of what do we know for sure could come in each month in our lowest earning months. And that's our baseline. That's what we really build our necessary spending off of because we know it's always going to be there. And then we'll have higher income months, right? And so those months we can really take advantage of to overfund savings, overfund retirement, overfund the fun stuff, throw some extra money towards the fun things too. But pay yourself a salary, right, from this variable income from your business activities, and you could even set up a separate account for this where you have money coming into your business account. You have kind of a draw for yourself where each month you pay yourself X amount from this account. And that's really where we're at. And if you just crushed it, killed it, had what was it? I think Macy had a $75,000 brand deal at one point. One brand deal was $75,000 or something. So, man, that'd be a nice month, right? So, probably go splurge a little, but also pay your necessary bills, put money towards your goals that you were saving up for. Like that's how you could think about it. But do you think about it about the same way?
Yeah. Well, from their perspective, I think it could feel like it's super variable, but for any type of business, I would argue that if you really have no idea what's coming in over the next 6 to 12 months, because month to month it will be variable as any type of business owner. But if you have, if I was talking to them as my clients and they're like, I have no idea what 6 months from now looks like, or what next quarter looks like, or on average, minimum to max what I could possibly be making, I would argue you're not doing enough reps. What does that mean? Like you're probably not reaching out to enough brands for brand deals. You're probably not looking at like your historical data of what you made. Because I've actually worked a lot with business owners where they'll tell me I have no idea how much I make. I cannot predict this at all. And then I'll look at the like last 2 years of their earnings and like quarter to quarter, it will be like within a 1 to 2 grand per month like range
Yeah,
average. And
right.
and then I'll be like, hey, is something drastically different about your business today than it was last year or 2 years ago or last month? Like, no. And I'll be like, okay. I'm like 95% sure you're gonna make between X and Y over the next 3 months. And then it happens. And so that's like, oh, so you can, even with super variable income, budget and do as you say. You can have like, you know, you can pay yourself a minimum salary based off of like really conservative assumptions. And then when the big payday hits, then you can use that to supercharge retirement investing, some fun stuff, and all that kind of stuff. So I would say if you have no clue as an influencer, what to expect over the next 3 to 6 months and how to budget for it, I would say we just need to look at the past data and also are you doing enough reps of whatever it is that you do to monetize your stuff.
Hmm. I think that's well said. Well, a couple topics. Let's do some kind of rapid fire conversations about different money situations that can happen with anybody, literally, but especially happen in the secret lives of Mormon wives.
Oh
First
my
and
Joseph
foremost,
Smith, I'm so excited.
so first was pay negotiation. So pay negotiation was a big topic on season 2 of the show. And the entire cast was having a conversation about it one night at dinner. They were trying to negotiate as a group versus as an individual because it is a group show, but then they all have their own individual agents, of course. But typically, a united front does equal a stronger negotiating power. Um, let's see, hang on a second. But a lot of folks typically are not in a group negotiation situation unless you're also going on a show like Secret Lives of Veterinarian Wives or something, or veterinary, you know,
We should do that.
that would be pretty cool.
Vets
But
are
it's one,
crazy, so get a lot of good
right?
content.
So I bet it could
All the
be,
secret
you
cat
could do it.
parties.
You could do it with like any profession and it could be pretty interesting. But, one of the quickest ways that you can change your financial situation is to increase your income, right? I say a lot, like if we have some cash flow issues where we need to pay down some debt or we need to save a little bit more for our goals, like I usually say something to the effect of, we can only change this. There's two ways to change this. It's either make more money or spend less or do a combination of the two. So if we want to be making more money, that's where negotiation could be your strong suit. So it could be negotiating your current job or looking for a different job with a higher salary. Negotiation could still be part of that equation. And so, a couple of things to keep in mind when it comes to negotiating. One thing to keep in mind before you leave your current job is thinking about how this would affect, and since we work with student loan borrowers a lot, how is this going to affect your student loan situation? Pause for a second. I have a video about how switching jobs could change your student loan situation. Go check that out on our YouTube page. That's a big factor in a lot of our clients' situations is what happens with our student loans. The good news is not a big deal. It's probably just taking a slightly different approach or the same approach with a different income, a different lifestyle potentially. Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, I don't think any of them would have student loan debt except for maybe Zach and Jen, that couple potentially, because he was going to med school. But we'll talk about them a little bit here in a second. So that might be one of the first things to think about as like our type of clients, like folks who are highly educated professionals. They're thinking about a job change, just thinking about what that does to your student loan situation. It's important to really think about all the options before making big changes, like the benefits that you're giving up or the benefits that you could be taking on at this new position, the work-life balance between the two. But negotiation is a big part of what can increase or manipulate your salary. And I know vets also have a big, they negotiation is a big part of like what's in the vet space, right?
I think too many vets don't negotiate and they don't realize how much power they have. If you're a veterinarian, you are a hot commodity. So many times I've seen um, because I think they come from a very conservative mindset standpoint, and like that part of that is valuing their skill set. And so I've seen them just take the first deal that an employer would provide them.
Mm, yeah.
And I always remind them, hey, as long as you do it in a respectful way, and you're not combative, ask and you shall receive sometimes. One of the vets I knew from this is years ago, I saw him go for an MDVM position, and they offered him, uh, you know, base plus production, but they tagged on something called negative accrual, which basically means, oh, if production is low 1 month, and you don't hit the point where you would make production slash commission, that would count against you for next month. Even if you did
Hmm.
hit threshold, you'd have to basically dig yourself out of the hole next
Oh,
month.
yeah.
And everybody at the practice that he had worked at just took it. He said, "Hey, before I sign on, can you take that out of the contract? I don't want negative accrual." They did.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
that simple because why would an employer give you better terms if you don't ask for it? Like
Yeah.
they want to pay you the least amount to get the most out of you. You want to, get the most out of them. Maybe
Hmm.
there's a good middle point that keeps you both happy, but if you never ask, why would they just give it to you, right?
That's a great
Um,
point. Yeah.
and
Never hurts to
and
ask.
Ask and you shall receive. Sometimes, not always, but
Sometimes. Yeah.
sometimes. And so negotiation, yeah, I deal with a lot of it with my clients, and a lot of it's just reminding yourself how much you're actually worth. If you're a medical
Hmm.
professional, especially because of this big beautiful bill and the loan limits, hey, we might have even way less supply of you guys moving forward the next couple of years. So it's like know your worth. Don't be afraid to ask respectfully. The worst thing what they could say is, no, we can't do that, in which case you're in the exact same position that you were before you asked,
Hmm.
or you can get more, right? So it never hurts to ask respectfully, I think, and know your numbers and data.
Yeah.
From I think the anybody on the Mormon wives, if they could probably negotiate higher splits or higher per episode pay or higher pay for brands if they could compile a bunch of data to show like, oh, here's why I'm worth it. A little
Hmm.
bit tougher to do than on the vet side, I think, but hey, that's why I like vets.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, and like Jesse, I know Jesse's argument in that conversation was she was the fan favorite of the season. And so she deserved more comp, is what she was saying. Like she was the fan favorite, so mo she was looked at more favorably overall. She should have gotten more pay compared to some of her counterparts. But I think in the like influencer space, like followers, active followers, like how many people engage with your posts online. That could be a decision point, when it comes to, or some data that you can bring to the table when you're backing things up in negotiations. There were some other interesting money relationships going on here. And what I mean by that is just how money can influence relationships in general between that person and money, or that person and other people, or that person and their brand. So let's talk a little bit more about that. One of the things that came after the season and some of the like Twitter wars and online wars that were going on between different castmates, but was the big drama around borrowing money, where I think Jesse said that Brett had asked her husband for money, $10,000 to pay their bills, and that's Demi's husband and or Demi, sorry, and that's
Yeah, what kind
Demi's
of name? Sidebar. What kind of name is Dummy? D and sorry to me if you are listening to
Demi,
this,
Demi,
but
yeah,
it's the only other Demi I've ever heard of is Demi Lovato, and it's like Demi.
yeah.
I'd want to talk to her parents and be like, "What were you thinking with that name?"
It's
It's
said
one
wrong
of the
probably every time.
yeah, it's said wrong every time, and and I think she argued second season that because of the positive reactions to her first season, which I watch everything, all of this because of my wife, but and I enjoy it, but I don't follow the Twitter wars or what happens outside the show. I only have so much time in my day, but
I know, yeah.
where was I going with that? Oh yeah, she had to be careful. The second season, to me, you know, I don't think she ended well. She
Right, she did
basically
not end
threatened to
well.
leave, and everybody was kind of like,
Okay,
okay,
bye. See
yeah. And
ya.
so pretty baller move from Taylor at the end too. She probably got exactly what she wanted with that exchange.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, Demi over Demi.
Demi,
There's no right or wrong with naming your children, except I think there was a wrong one in this one. Like, I'm
hot
sorry.
take. Hot
Hot
take.
take. Demi,
But
I'm sorry.
yeah, so I think like that's kind of an interesting situation. And this is so borrowing money from friends or family, right? That can always be a tricky situation when it comes to like, okay, what are the terms and conditions? Like, are you going to pay me back within a certain time frame? What if you can't pay me back within that time frame? Like it does like cause some awkwardness in a relationship. What could have prevented this? Emergency savings could have prevented this, having a budget off of that variable income that was coming in. And this is all like alleged. Who knows if this was actually true, but an interesting topic. And I'm sure all of us at some point, somehow, some way, have either been in a situation where you were lending or borrowing money from a family member, or you knew someone close to you where this happened, and it just usually it doesn't end well, right? It usually ends in some kind of tense something because of XYZ. You know, there's a million reasons why it could go wrong. So just don't do it. Rely on yourself when you can.
Yeah. If a client asks me, should I have a buddy, because yeah, it's tough. If I had a client who asked me, can I loan out money to a friend? I'd be like, do you want my opinion? And that's why they pay us for it. It's our opinion. They'd say yes, and I'll say, don't do it. And they'll be like,
Hmm.
but I really want to. And I'll be like, well, don't do it.
Yeah.
Like yeah, because if you follow that advice, you will be okay. If you don't follow that advice, you might be okay,
Hmm.
or the relationship could get strained. They don't pay you back. You're out money that you shouldn't have loaned out, right? There's all these could be, could be bad. Best case scenario, you're okay, right?
Yeah.
Worst case scenario puts a strain on the relationship and you're out money. And then, yeah, with family, everybody's family's dynamics are different, but you just got to be careful, is all I'll
Hmm.
say on that.
Yes. Speaking to another, I think gender norm, maybe within the Mormon culture, the breadwinner situation when it comes to these Mormon
Mm.
wives making a lot more money than their male counterparts. So one of the big topics in season two as well was Zach, which is Jen's husband. He admittedly, in an interview later, the Nick Viles files, I think is what it was on, he admitted that he had resisted Jen's input on financial decisions, even though she was, at the time, the breadwinner and she, was making a lot of her own income. She had a lot of money coming in on her own. He says it was something that made him insecure and he was trying to find his own way, like going back to school. He was going to med school. He had a summer sales job that used to pay their bills. And he was the one who was making 100% of those decisions on the money at that time. And then when Jen started making more money, she wanted to make all the decisions, right? So they had to navigate that as a couple. And that's kind of an interesting situation because in Mormon culture, like usually the moms, the wives are stay-at-home parents. They don't have the income coming in. They don't really make those financial decisions. So this is a modern take on like Mormonism when it comes to like a woman being the breadwinner. And how do they navigate that situation together in their culture, in their religion, but also just, mechanically, how do they go about it? But it does seem like they worked through it. They put together a kind of a budget system where it was, here's the money that I could spend. If it's going over that, we need to have a conversation. Here's the money you can spend. If you're going to go over that, we need to have a conversation. And that seems to have helped them. But that does lead us into the gambling topic. But any thoughts on that before we move on to gambling?
Yeah, I would say, like, if they were my clients, the way I would have coached them through their issues that they had with that is like, it just, there's nothing wrong with being a stay-at-home mom. Sometimes financially, that's the thing that makes the most sense to do. And there's also absolutely nothing wrong with someone going and making a bunch of money.
Right.
So I would say for them, like, you just need to be a team with your spouse. Because I'm thinking, like, assuming that he went to med school because he truly wanted to be a doctor, right? Because a lot of most doctors don't become a doctor for the money. If you were willing to work that hard throughout med school, residency, fellowship, everything, if you just
Hmm.
like did all that on something else and your goal is to make the most money, you probably make more money not being a doctor if you just
Yeah.
did anything with that level of intensity, right? But you're going to make a great living. So I would say, hey, if goal was to be medical professional with or without or doctor with or without this mom talk thing that Jen like stumbled on, and it was, I assume, a grave mine
Hmm.
or grave mine, a gold mine. Um,
Great
well,
line.
if you or maybe it's a grave mine, I don't know. But like,
Maybe for their marriage.
if maybe, um, and yeah, was she in the swinging scandal? I don't even know who was involved with the swinging scandal. They
No,
keep
I don't think
on
she was.
talking about it, but like I don't know who was involved. Anyway, it's oh, they also sidebar, they always throughout both seasons they keep on referencing what Mom Talk was originally about, and they
Yeah.
need to get back to that.
Hmm.
What the heck was it supposed to be originally about?
I
Like
think
they were
originally
dancing
it
on
was
TikTok.
inspiring women, like, yeah, it was
Oh,
inspiring
I'm
women, being relatable, like that kind of thing.
My conspiracy is they were having fun on TikTok. It blew up, and then retroactively, they're like, "Hey, like this is about some really cool,
Deep stuff, yeah.
hard, deep hit heart." I'm like, "No, it wasn't. Come on, my take." But back to the relationship stuff that they went through because what's his name? And I say what's his name because I can't remember his name.
Zach.
Gonna be honest, Zach. Zach feeling insecure about Jen being the quote breadwinner. It just feels like you're not working as a team then. You should always, regardless of your gender, feel if your spouse is killing it, like be their cheerleader and be happy. Because if it's a team, what's mine's yours and what's yours is mine, right? And if the goal was to be a doctor, well, oh my gosh, how much easier financially of a journey is it to become a doctor when you're on the journey of making next to nothing for nothing in med school probably, and then next to nothing comparatively speaking throughout, residency, fellowship, whatever. If you have a partner who can support you through that because she's quote the breadwinner, that allows him to just focus on being the best doctor possible. And then once he's the doctor, that conservatively locks in their long-term financial stability as long as they don't be dumb once he starts making that money. And so it's like that's a huge opportunity where she can basically lock in his ability to lock in that future success. And so like to feel anything less than, oh my gosh, this is awesome to me was like pretty wimpy. I'm just gonna
Hmm.
say.
Yeah. He
That's
got a
my
lot of heat for it for sure. He got a lot of heat for it. And he like came around and they worked through it probably. I mean, you got to also understand, like in the Mormon culture, I can only imagine like these ideals of how a family should look. I'm sure has been drilled down into them since they were kids. Like that's all they've ever known. That's all they've ever seen. And now in this new kind of world that they're living, where you can make money on social media, like holy cow, that wasn't a thing 20 years ago. They're having to navigate it and also go against all those like historic things that they're like thinking is wrong or they're thinking is not the right way of doing things. So it's very tricky, but yes, he got a lot of flack for it online for sure. And part of why he got a lot of
sorry,
flack,
man.
it was because it was said that he had been spending his money, their money on gambling. He had been
The gambling, yeah.
gambling some of their money away. That was what was said, or his medical funds as well. So we talked about student loans a second ago. Like he was gambling some of his student loan funds, apparently. And this is allegedly, right? So another topic,
Allegedly.
allegedly, yeah. A topic for season two was Zach's gambling. He would come home from school, he would do sports betting with friends online at night, which was causing tension in their marriage because it was, hey, you've been gone all day. I've been here all day with the kids. Like, it's my turn for a little bit of a break. That's always like something in a household that is hard to navigate is like the shifts of parenting because even a stay-at-home mom, um, that is a job throughout the day. Like you're with the kids
Hmm.
all day, every day. You don't get a break, literally, until your spouse gets home or your partner gets home. So, but they said they worked through that. They set some boundaries on how much they could spend time wise and then money wise on that. But gambling kind of cracked open a can of worms for me because there's a lot of biases, cognitive biases that can lead to gambling, but could also lead to just bad financial decisions. So I thought they would be kind of interesting to go through. So this, and I got a lot of insight from an article on the Economic Times Bureau, or from the Economic Times Bureau, from the Economic Times Bureau, by Raju Mehta. So one of the biases, or one of the reasons, kind of leading into gambling is sensation seeking. So this is, I would say, maybe a personality trait that's for people looking for excitement, something intense, a new experience. This is very typical of gamblers. It usually translates into maybe high risk investments like futures or options or day trading or crypto. And we all know some folks that might be interested in those things, but it's sometimes it's for the thrill, right? And that could be dangerous if it's with your money, especially if it's with the majority of your money. So, our stance when it comes to things that are a little more speculative, so let's say crypto, doing your own trading like within your own play account, is that's totally fine if that's something that you enjoy, but don't let it be with money that you've got set aside for your longer term future. Like if you've got, let's say, the equivalent of a finger invested in some crypto and you just want to see what's happening, and the whole rest of your body is your retirement accounts, your other investment accounts, your other assets, fine. If you lose a finger, you're not going to die, But if you
Maybe
are
I'm more conservative than you. When I go invest my money, I'm not putting my finger on the line. But okay, you're all right.
if you
Yeah.
are interested in this kind of stuff, I'm not saying you should be doing this stuff,
Okay.
especially if you don't care about it. You're not interested, it's not something that's intriguing to you. But if it is, and then this is where I'm like, okay, it might be okay if you lose a finger. If you're not so great at
I'm
this
just
in
imagining
particular.
you, Megan, with your clients with that analogy, and your clients being like, "Well, what if I'm willing to lose a hand?" And then you're
Oh
negotiating, like,
God.
"Okay, okay, client, just don't lose your whole arm. Okay, we need that." But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
Finances, behavior as well. All right. Another thing, another couple topics that come to mind when it comes to gambling, but also just like in general financial related topics: greed, desire for quick, big gains. We see this a lot in investing, I would say. But
hmm
when it comes to gambling, this need for making a killing drives a lot of gamblers, as well as investors with no knowledge of products or those in financial distress. We see a lot of abuse when it comes to like finfluencers online that take advantage of the get rich quick schemes with like MLMs or like other pyramid schemes that are out there, even like influencers out there are like, I don't pay a dime in taxes, blah, 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 blah. And it's like people feel like they should be doing XYZ when in reality, like their situation is totally different from what that person online is talking about. So the greed, the desire for quick, big gains, like that could be a really slippery slope, especially when it comes to investing, especially like greed. You never want to make decisions when you're investing based on greed or fear. That's what we learn a lot about in behavioral finance. If we're investing because of greed, that means maybe we're eyeing a stock that's doing amazing and we're already late to the game. It's already doing amazing. So we're buying in high. We're getting greedy, or we're doing something out of fear, right? Let's say we're pulling all of our money out of our positions, throwing it into cash because we're scared of what the market is doing. Maybe the market's going down. Well, shoot, we really we shot ourselves in the foot while we were already like down on the ground, because if the market's going down, we're taking money out, we're locking in those losses. So we talk a lot about this when it comes to investing in general, but these are not good things to be applying to your investing strategy, right? Is there anything you want to
No,
add to that?
there's a couple things that I can add to that. One is I think the gambler's mentality when it comes to investing, they're kind of always chasing the highest rate of return
Yeah.
possible. And they're not protecting their downside risk. But from the standpoint of they don't if you approach investing with the gambler's mentality, a lot of the times most in, a lot of those types of investors I feel like don't have a goal behind the investment. They just want to make the most money, but money is just a tool. And
Hmm.
so I had a client recently who needed a certain amount of cash to close on a very expensive home, which he could afford. but he needed a certain amount of cash in like boring cash to
Hmm.
close a year from now for his build that he was building. And he wanted to know how I would better invest his, $700,000 in treasuries that he was keeping because he thought he was leaving too much money on the table. Well, we did the math and we decided, like, hey, with what he wants the post-purchase life to look like, he might need like 1.3 million to close a year from now. In which case, I was like, my answer of how should you better invest your treasuries to make more return is you shouldn't. You should keep them in treasuries or cash in a high yield savings account or one of
Hmm.
those like cash equivalent investments, right? Liquid, you know exactly what the return's going to be. It's boring and it's there ready to close because this is a less than 3 year time horizon. And the additional return that you would get even if things went well, wouldn't be life changing. Whether it was over 3 year time for 5 or 10 or 20%, it wasn't going to change his life very much. And so, if that extra return doesn't change your life very much, what was the point in taking the risk to get it? If the
Hmm.
downside is you don't get to do the thing that you were going to want to do. And so, for him and a lot of other people, I have to use the analogy I like to use a lot with investing is, and doing it in a not so risky way for the highest rate of return is, hey, if someone gave me the to pick between two options, one, I get 100% chance of getting $100 million today given to me, or I get a 50% likelihood of winning $1 billion, right? The smart gambler might say, we'll go with the $1 billion 50% chance because the expected return, the expected statistical value of that's 500 million, right? Which is more than 100 million. I would say, no, give me the 100 million because for my goals, if somebody gave me $100 million, I could live life however the exact way I'd want to live it. And I'd be totally fine, never have to work another day in my life. Therefore, the extra dollar above that is kind of worthless. So why take the extra risk of not getting any of it, right? If I already won the game, even though the expected value and rate of return is less, statistically speaking. So I think even a lot of quote good gamblers will approach investing in that way for the highest expected rate of return, even though it wasn't worth the excessive risk because it wasn't going to change their life anyway. They could have won the game more easily. Um,
Hmm.
and I guess I rambled off on that because I do have a few clients who struggle with gambling. And so behavioral wise too, I have no like, unlike Mormons, I have no qualm like with if you like gambling. Like, go do it if you like it. I don't morally care. I think it's fine.
Hmm.
But I do think if you're doing it to make money, that's where I have issue. Like, don't expect to do it because think it's going to make you money. Statistics say that's wrong. And also, if you recognize that, but you like doing it for fun, that I can get behind. So pretend it's like you're going out to eat budget. And hey, if you're down $100, but you were gonna spend $100 going out to eat elsewhere, like, cool, that's fine. And then probably don't bet your student loan proceeds on gambling.
Right.
Actually, I think that's illegal. But also, to his credit in the show, I think he said, no, that never actually happened. He just
Yeah.
gambled his own money.
I think it
Um,
was like an over exaggeration of
yeah.
something. Like maybe something said in a fight that was like blown out of context, you know. Totally could have happened. A couple other, like I would say, behaviors, mentalities, biases that I think are important to highlight because they're not just related to gamblers. They can be related to an investor, to someone in a financial situation. Anyways, social proofing. This is the psychological phenomenon where unsure investors will mimic those that are having good experiences in a particular type of investment. So when they see people making huge gains in crypto or in penny stocks, they will follow suit. And this kind of relates to the herd mentality as well. Herd mentality is just like what it sounds like. Investor segments with no knowledge of investing and maybe low socioeconomic profiles will typically follow what the masses are doing. If you don't know why you're investing, it can be considered a gamble, right? And we said earlier, like if you're kind of following a really hot stock or a really hot fund in investing, or you're, following a hot hand, right? And gambling, you have that herd mentality. And that's not making decisions based on like the strength of the company, the odds, the pure odds, right? If we're talking about gambling. And that can lead to bad, results when it comes to financial decisions. So that's one thing to be aware of, and just a bias to know exists to kind of catch yourself. There's survivorship bias. This bias makes people
Mm.
invest by focusing on only selective information put out to the public. So when friends or influencers declare their fortune was made during day trading or derivatives without mentioning any of their losses or their like downsides, right? People rush to make poor investing choices because they're like, "Huh, I'm going to focus on the good part of that." It's kind of like in dating too. It's some instances, you focus on only the good pieces and then you're overlooking some of the bad red flags that are popping up here and there. But
Well,
you,
I might be the wrong person to bring that topic up because I've been with the same person since I was 15. But so yeah, maybe that's huge survivor bias right there. But yeah, the other thing on survivor bias too, like I see a lot of people point to, well, look at that guy or girl, they
yeah,
did it
yeah,
by being that's insert super risky investment strategy, right? And I say, well, statistically speaking, like if there was uh, just by pure luck, someone was going to make money by investing in something random, they had a 1% chance of like making a big return on it. Someone made money doing something.
hmm
It might just be luck. And because someone is statistically, like at least one person is going to win doing that strategy just by sheer luck, does that mean you should go
chance.
listen to that one person, or should that one person think that they knew something special? You know, I
hmm
made I have to tell all my whether I tell a lot of my high roller clients, the people who like to invest a little bit more aggressively in alternative assets or individual stocks or stock or option trading or whatever. I just remind them like, hey, about a decade ago, I invested in some Tesla. Now, I wasn't making what I was making now 10 years ago, but I put what I could put in, and I got lucky. I probably made like 10 or 15 grand in profit off of that. Um, and so I thought I was hot stuff for like a second. And then I
hmm
started picking, so I picked like 10 or 15 other individual stocks, and all of them over the next year or two made either nothing or lost a little bit of money. So then I realized, oh, survivor bias, right? If I had just stopped at Tesla and thought I was like the thing, I think I just got lucky. I don't think I actually had a leg up or was, gonna beat the market or whatever. So, yeah,
hmm
just back to the whole gambling mindset is if you're going to invest trying to make money like gambling, you want to put some guardrails up and only risk your finger, not the whole hand like um,
Yes.
or if you're a musician, make like me, make sure you can lose a limb investing that you could still play guitar with. I don't
Right. Or if you're a
know.
dentist or somebody who uses your
Yeah.
hands in surgery, like maybe a toe.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, and that kind of ties into like the illusion of control bias in a sense. So a bias common to gamblers and common to investors is making, the belief that you can control the outcome of an investment when in fact you can't. You have no control over it. This leads you to maybe investing more in an instrument or a fund or a product that you don't know a lot about, and the result could be losses. Um, and then kind of tying into losses, there's what's called revenge trading, where this is a trait where people continue
Mm,
to dig and dig and dig into a deeper grave for themselves in effort to redeem their losses that they've already, and this is also kind of related to sunk cost fallacy, where you've already lost so much, right? You're angered by the loss. You lost so much already that you just continue to invest to try to avenge it, to try to get, get yourself out of it. Almost always ending in a bigger loss or just a bigger financial ruin. So That's something to be aware of. And I think some end stages when it comes to gambling or just some of these other like financial biases. This bias makes people adverse to losses, sorry, because a losing a small amount affects them more deeply than earning a bigger amount. So they might lose a little and that deeply affects them. They'll win some, right? And that doesn't really affect them as much, but their losses really kill them. So to redeem the financial losses and the fall in pride, you keep investing in a losing stock. So this is similar to that like sunk cost fallacy we were talking about. And putting good money in after the bad. So kind of continuing to do something that's not working to redeem yourself in some form or fashion. And then the last little bias I want to throw out there, and then we'll move on to close things up. Gambler's fallacy. This bias is very, very visible in gamblers, making an investor believe that a random outcome is more likely because of a series of opposite events has happened. So there's been, there's been lots of losses in a stock for a long time, they are convinced that it's going to make a comeback soon. So actually, I have a quick story about
Ah,
this one. I think a lot of us have stories about like this one in particular. But I fell victim to this. My friend group fell victim to this, and it was all in good fun. We had an idea that we could lose, but we did. We were at a wedding. We went to a casino. We played. We played roulette, where the little ball goes around the
mhm.
table, and we were really betting on the color. We weren't putting numbers, or we weren't putting anything on like the numbers. It was more like the color. Is it going to be red or is it going to be black? And we were putting all on red or all on black. And we were at a table where it was consistently black. It was black, 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 over and over and over again. And we're sitting there and we're thinking, it's gotta be red next, right? Like 50-50, it's gotta be red. It's time. But again, it's still 50-50 odds. So it was three couples. So we put down $100 each for each couple, $300. So like not chump change. And that was our bet. We were going to go all on red. And that was like our saying, all on red, all on red. And it was just a series of blacks up until then. And so basically, it was all or nothing. We knew we were going to leave if we lost, but we were also going to leave if we won and be winners. We would have doubled our money. It would have been great. We ended up losing. It was black again. So we went home immediately with our tails between our legs, right? But that's an example of like odds are still odds when it comes to gambling. And, gambler's fallacy, like just because something is consistently happening, just because a stock is doing bad for a while, doesn't mean it's going to automatically flip over and turn into a good investment later on. Like you really have to think about what's the company about, what's it invested in, XYZ. You have to think about all those other things, but I thought that was kind of a funny example.
I've only been gambling like 3 or 4 times in my life, and one was for we were traveling for a wedding actually, and I played some blackjack. And I probably was up by like $30 or $40, and then I closed out, and I thought that was like, I'm done. That's the close out to my gambling career. I am so good. I'm just gonna stop now because I'm so loss averse. Yeah, it's I feel like a lot of financial Joseph Smith was on my side that night, I guess. But I feel like I haven't met too many financial planners who were like super into gambling, but I have met a bunch who were probably like lost some gambling, and then we were like, well, this doesn't work. Let me go do all the financial things right, I guess. Um, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, gambling, I mean, we talked a lot about gambling there, and Zach may not have even been gambling his money away. Who knows? But I think it does come into play here when it comes, these biases are still present like throughout the season when it comes to different things, which I think is kind of interesting. And we see this throughout a client relationship as well, that we have to recognize, okay, here's a bias that's happening. We have to call it out, recognize it, and then start to move in a more productive direction with our clients to just have better results for the overall financial picture. Man, we
Oh,
covered a lot.
fun.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, last fun fact about gambling, I guess, because we're financial planners here and money nerds. I don't know if it made its way into the final Big Beautiful Bill. I can't believe that's what it's called. That's the life we're living in. But I think it did. You know, don't sue me. Consult your accountant if you're a professional gambler. But in the bill made it so that there's a provision that's basically anti-gambling. I don't think the people who made the bill probably liked this TV show very much, but they made it so that you could pay you could pay income taxes on I think up to $10,000 in losses on gambling. So if you're a professional gambler and you're up 100,000, you've got 100K in gambling revenue throughout the year, and
hmm
then on the expense side between flights, food, whatever, anything that you could write off as an expense. Let's say you had 110,000 in expenses, but 100 grand in winnings, so you're actually minus 10,000 for the year. The bill made it so that you could possibly owe income taxes on the $10,000 in losses, which I think is insane. In no other
Hmm.
business can you lose money and pay taxes on that. So
Right.
I don't know. The If you
Really
were drafting the
discouraging
bill,
gambling.
I would love to interview the people who made that provision part of the giant bill and be like, did you guys see this show? Are you not a fan of this TV show or things like gambling? I don't know. That's what we're worrying about when we're watching TV shows like this is how does the new tax bill, affect the
Right.
people on it? So Zach, you might want
Exactly.
to look into that.
Well, this was fun. I think, at the end of the day, if you are building your brand on TikTok or if you're working as a part-time dentist or a 1099 veterinarian or locums physician, taking moonlight shifts, your money should be working as hard as you are at the end of the day, right? For everybody here. So if you've got questions about managing your 1099 income or creating a financial plan that flexes with your career, flexes with your variable income, check out SLP Wealth. We specialize in helping high income professionals with pretty complex situations, especially if student loans are part of the picture. So check us out. We'll have some more information down below in the description. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks, David, for joining me today.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. And hey, if you're a veterinarian out there who just wants to talk with your financial planner about all the different Real Housewives, all the different Bravo shows, all the different reality TV shows, I know this one's not Bravo, but I'm your financial planner then because I watch all of them, for better
Perfect.
or worse.
Well, thanks for joining me, and we will catch you on the next one.
Are you ready to unlock financial freedom faster with SLP Wealth? Get high quality, affordable, student loan aware financial planning and get the best deal for it anywhere that you're going to find working with your own dedicated SLP Wealth financial planner that is able to give you the best integrated advice across financial planning, investments, and tax, along with all the student loan hacks that you know you need and that you know impact all other areas of your financial planning. The deal you're going to find here is special just for podcast listeners. If you go to promo.slpwealth.com, you can sign up with a great discount off your first month. That's promo.slpwealth.com.